Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of History in and Around Warren County. Now today, we're going to be doing a little bit of a focus on the town of Belvidere, which happens to be my town of residence, and it is also a rather historic town. Evidence number one behind me, we have the grave of one General Robert McAllister, who I originally misremembered. I thought this was the man, Major Robert Hoops, but I knew there was a Robert in there. But this is actually, Major Robert Hoops was a other way around, Revolutionary War major, and General Robert McAllister was a Civil War general. He participated in many battles throughout the Civil War. You can see them all actually inscribed on the back of his grave site here. He is interred here alongside his wife. And as I said, all of his exploits are etched into the back of his grave site. He was at Bull Run in reserve, West Point, Gaines Farm, Charles City, Crossroads, Malvern Hill. He was at Gettysburg, very cool. Kelly's Ford, Locust Grove, Mine Run, Wilderness Run, Pennsylvania May, Tolopotomy Creek, Barker's Mill, Deep Bottom, North Bank of James River, and going all the way down to the end. He was present for General Lee's surrender, which is very cool. And yes, interred here with his wife, and the grave sites are here in Belvidere, New Jersey, along with another good number of historical sites, which we will be seeing today. We will now be moving to the Shoe Tree of Belvidere, New Jersey, which is a very, very interesting little piece of local history. Hello, and we stand here in front of the Shoe Tree of Belvidere, New Jersey. That is obviously a rather interesting name. Why is this called the Shoe Tree? And the answer to that is rather interesting, because this is where people would store their shoes. Once upon a time, people would come here and they would hang their shoes actually on this tree. And the website says that they would hang them here before they would go to worship. And the sign here says that they would put their shoes on before going to worship, which makes a whole lot more sense to me. I feel like the sign is correct. They would put their shoes on before they would go to worship across the village green, and they took their shoes off to either play around the tree itself or whatnot, or perhaps in some cases they might have actually taken their shoes off to go to work. Because, and that's likely what I'm thinking, is because that shoes are not a common resource for the farming, your subsistence farmers that I mentioned in a previous video. You have a large amount of farmers, especially in the 1800s and the mid to late 1700s. You have farmers who grow only enough food to live and eat, and perhaps maybe in a fantasy afford some extra shoes at some point. But shoes were things that were precious and needed to be kept in rather good order. So you wouldn't have wanted to have them while you were working, unless you needed them, unless you were working on like stone or hard ground, which your farmers wouldn't be. If you were going out to play in the mud, or if you were going to worship, that's when you would want to have your shoes on. So, anyway, this is where people would go to store their shoes, basically, while they were playing or working or doing whatever it is that they needed to do while they hung their shoes up on the shoe tree. Hello, everyone. And welcome to the Warren County Carriage House, just a little bit down the street from the Shoe Tree. And this site was once owned by Major Robert Hoops, who had a large amount to do with the establishment of this town. He built a grist mill. This, according to the website, was the site of a slaughterhouse in which he slaughtered meat, which he used to send to the Continental Army for the American Revolution. This slaughterhouse, along with the grist mill and various of his exploits throughout the town, were part of how he built this town, essentially. However, this property, after I'm sure Major Hoops died, or however this property ended up being divested from him, this property ends up passing from Hoops to a D.C. Blair, who I, at the time of right now, do not know whether or not he is related to the Blairstown Blairs, but it did fall into a Blair estate, which is when you start to get into the 1800s, I believe, and I don't know if it's the mid or late 1800s, but that is when the Blair estate holds this building until it becomes the site of the Warren County Historical Society, which is what it is today. I don't know whether or not this is their headquarters. Somebody's here because somebody came out and asked us what we were doing while we were here. But yes, this is now a Warren County historical site at the very least, and it is a pretty cool one.
There we go.
We are standing now in between, actually, two separate, not really separate, but two historical sites that make up essentially the heart of the town of Belvidere. We have to our left the county park, which was donated by one Garrett Wall, who I have a little information here about, but in 1824, this land was donated to be used always to be kept and continued open as a public square, walk, promenade for the free, common, and interrupted use of the county of Warren forever, which is pretty cool. Now, Garrett Wall is a very important person to the history of this town. The Robert Morris Tract, which is a person that Robert Morris owned all the land that this town was on at one point. The Robert Morris Tract, south of the Pequest, comprising 614 acres, was bought in 1825 by Garrett D. Wall, who was elected governor of New Jersey in 1829. He sold the Croxall Mansion to John M. Sherrard, Esquire, our first county clerk, in 1827, and the rest of the tract he laid out in building lots. During this time, the selection of Belvidere as the county seat of the newly formed county of Warren created a building boom, and vacant lots were purchased at extravagant prices. One corner lot bringing $3,600 in its day, which this is referring to 1825. So that is a massive sum of money. Mr. Wall gave the sites for the park, courthouse, and the Methodist and Presbyterian churches. So yeah, it must have, when it passed into his possession, all this must have been designated out when he was going through all of his new holdings. Now, that sits to my left, to my direct right, which we will cross the street very safely, looking left and right before we do so. We move across the street to the courthouse. Also, County Park is designated in 1824. This courthouse is built in 1826 and is the location of early sensational trials and public hangings, which were a event for a town, let's say. It was something that drew people out of their homes to go and watch, either because you liked the person that was being hanged or you really, really didn't like them. This brought you to a public hanging and even certain trials and whatnot. This would have been a place of activity, that's for certain. Its present colonial appearance retained in 1959 to 60 restoration. Very cool. So restored in 1959 to 1960 in its original colonial appearance. Very cool building. The website talks a little bit about that the courthouse annex is the site of the slaughterhouses of Major Robert Hoops. That another website also says that, or rather, the website for the carriage house says that that is the site for it as well. I'm not sure whether or not perhaps that was at one point part of the court. Perhaps that was at one point part of the court annex and eventually became the carriage house. I'm not 100% sure about that, but still, all part of Belvidere's history and the various peoples that made up its establishment. We arrive at, this I believe is going to be the end of our journey so far. We may revisit other sites in Belvidere, and we are obviously going to continue visiting sites throughout Warren County, but we are ending our journey here today at the Twin Mills. The Twin Mills are the Major Robert Hoops Mill and the Red Frame Mill. I believe I gestured opposite, but because I believe this brick building, I love this kind of sort of conflicting of styles, or not really, depending on how you look at it, but you have red wood over here, and then you have an actual red brick building over on the left, which likely is the Robert Hoops Mill. And this is likely the mill that the website specifically says the Robert Hoops Mill was built in 1790 by Hoops to produce felt, but was later converted to a grist mill. And the Red Frame Mill was also a grist mill, but owned by someone else. Who that was, I don't know, and the website doesn't know either. But, obviously was owned by somebody and was obviously rather well built by somebody. But another additional piece of information, for many years in the 1900s, the mill and the adjacent Red Frame Mill were both operating simultaneously and independently of each other as feed mills. That wraps up our journey here through Belvidere and the historical sites in Belvidere, New Jersey. We hope to see you again. Please like, subscribe, comment, and all those things. Thank you very much.